The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the harmonious hum of 1,000 different languages being translated in real time. Ambassador Marcus Rivera stood at the speaker's podium, his weathered hands gripping the edges as he surveyed the sea of alien faces before him. Some possessed multiple eyes that blinked in patterns he couldn't decipher. Others had crystalline features that refracted the chamber's lights into rainbow cascades, and a few existed as pure energy contained within shimmering force fields. "Honorable delegates," Marcus began, his voice carrying across the vast amphitheater, "humanity formally requests admission to the Galactic Trade Consortium. Earth offers unique resources, diverse cultures, and a sound erupted from the Velthari delegation, something between a growl and what humans might generously call laughter. The insectoid ambassador Krixtal rose on 6 legs, his mandibles clicking with obvious disdain. The primitives from the third rock wished to play with their betters. More derisive sounds echoed through the chamber. The crystalline quarians chimed, like breaking glass, while the gaseous nethoid's containment fields flickered with what Marcus had learned to recognize as amusement. "Earth," announced High Counselor Vexra, her serpentine form coiling behind the central dais, "is what we classify as a backwater world. Your species has barely mastered interplanetary travel. You lack psionic abilities, your technology is crude, and your lifespans are laughably brief. What could you possibly offer the galaxy's most advanced civilizations?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks, but he maintained his diplomatic composure. "We offer innovation, adaptability, and desperation," interrupted another delegate, this one resembling a walking tree with bark that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. "Your world is dying from your own incompetence. You've poisoned your oceans, depleted your resources, and your population wars among itself for scraps." The truth stung because it contained kernels of reality, but Marcus knew they were missing the bigger picture. "We offer something none of your species possess," he said, his voice growing stronger. "We offer the perspective of a species that has had to fight for everything we've achieved. We've learned to solve problems others consider impossible because giving up has never been an option." The chamber erupted in what could only be described as galactic laughter. Even the usually stoic silicon-based architects, beings who communicated through geometric patterns, shifted their crystalline structures in what Marcus recognized as mockery. "Rejected," Vexra declared with finality. "Earth's application for consortium membership is denied. Your species may reapply in 500 standard years, assuming you survive that long." As Marcus gathered his materials, he noticed one delegate who hadn't joined in the mockery. An elderly being from the Keeper species, ancient librarians who maintained the galaxy's accumulated knowledge, watched him with what might have been sympathy. The Keeper's large, luminous eyes met his for a moment before the being looked away. Walking through the station's corridors afterward, Marcus passed holographic displays showing real-time galactic news. Wars raged across 17 sectors. The Devourer Plague was consuming entire star systems, converting matter into something that defied classification. Ancient automated defense networks had begun attacking their creators' descendants. The galaxy, for all its advancements, seemed to be tearing itself apart. Back in his modest quarters, Marcus composed his report to Earth's United Nations. "Mission unsuccessful," he began, then paused. Outside his viewport, he could see Earth, hanging in the darkness, blue, green, and beautiful despite its scars. Something told him this wasn't the end of humanity's galactic story. It was merely the beginning. 6 months after humanity's rejection, the galaxy faced its greatest existential threat in recorded history. The entity they called the Void Swarm had emerged from the dark spaces between galactic arms, a writhing mass of antimatter constructs that consumed everything in their path, leaving behind regions of absolute nothingness. Dr. Elena Vasquez, stood in Earth's primary defense coordination center, watching the holographic displays that showed the swarm's relentless advance. Each red dot represented a solar system that had simply ceased to exist. The rate of expansion was accelerating. Current projections show the swarm reaching the outer colonies in 18 months, reported General Harrison, his face grim in the blue glow of the tactical displays. The Galactic Council's combined fleets have engaged the enemy 17 times, 17 defeats. They're not just losing ships. The vessels are being completely annihilated at the quantum level. Elena nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. As Earth's leading xenoarchaeologist, and now head of the Emergency Response Division, she'd spent the past months studying every piece of data the galaxy's panicking species had finally decided to share. What about their super weapons? The Quarian? Reality disruptors? The Velthari singularity cannons? Useless, Harrison replied. The swarm seems to exist partially outside normal space-time. Conventional weapons, even exotic ones, can't achieve target lock. Energy weapons are absorbed and somehow made stronger. The Council's best scientists are calling it impossible to defeat. A priority communication alert chimed through the center. Elena activated the display to see the haggard face of the same keeper she'd noticed watching Marcus during that fateful rejection. The ancient being's luminous eyes seemed dimmed with exhaustion. "Dr. Vasquez," the keeper began, speaking in accented but clear English, "I am Archivist Renda. I have spent 3 centuries studying the most obscure corners of galactic history. I believe humanity may possess something we have overlooked." Elena leaned forward. "What kind of something?" "Your species' approach to impossible problems. We have records of humanity's history, how you turned deserts into gardens, how you cured diseases considered incurable, how you've consistently achieved what your own experts declared impossible. The galaxy's advanced species have grown comfortable. We solve problems through superior technology or raw power. We have forgotten how to think differently." General Harrison scoffed. "Thinking differently won't stop antimatter constructs from consuming star systems." Renda's expression remained serious. "Perhaps not directly, but I have been analyzing the swarm's behavior patterns. There is something organic about their movement. They are not random. They follow patterns that suggest purpose, even intelligence. Your species has unique experience with adaptive evolutionary thinking." Elena felt a spark of recognition. "You think they're not just destroying, they're hunting something specific." "Or someone," Renda confirmed. "The swarm's path through. The galaxy is not arbitrary. They are moving towards something in the galactic core. But what they seek, and why they consume everything in their path to reach it, remains unknown." After the transmission ended, Elena stared at the tactical display showing the swarm's progression. Earth had 18 months before the outer colonies. Fell, perhaps 24 before the swarm reached the inner systems. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were helpless, their conventional thinking inadequate against an unconventional threat. She thought about humanity's history of solving impossible problems, not through superior technology, but through creativity, stubborn persistence, and the willingness to try approaches others considered insane. "General," she said finally, "I need you to send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them Earth is prepared to offer assistance with the Void Swarm crisis." Harrison raised an eyebrow. "They'll laugh at us again." Elena smiled grimly. "Let them. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And if there's one thing humanity understands, it's desperation." The Galactic Council's emergency session was held in a different chamber than humanity's original rejection, a war room deep within the station's secured core. The atmosphere was thick with fear and desperation as representatives from over 200 species crowded around holographic displays showing the Void Swarm's continued advance. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered with a small human delegation, and the reaction was immediate. hostile glares, dismissive chittering, and the electronic equivalent of sighs from the artificial intelligences present. They were here because they had nowhere else to turn, not because anyone believed Earth could help. High Counselor Vexra's serpentine form was coiled tightly with stress. Dr. Vasquez, your message claimed humanity has insights into the Void Swarm. 3 more systems were consumed while we waited for your arrival. What can a backwater species possibly offer that our greatest minds cannot provide? Elena stepped forward, her tablet displaying data she'd compiled from their databases. You've been treating the swarm as a force of nature, like a cosmic storm to be weathered or deflected. But what if it's not? What if it's a living system with purpose and logic? The Velthari military commander's mandibles clicked aggressively. Impossible. The constructs show no biological signatures. They exist in a state that defies our understanding of life itself. Life as you understand it, Elena corrected. On Earth, we've discovered life in environments we once thought impossible, in boiling acid, in radioactive waste, in the vacuum of space itself. Life adapts. Evolution finds ways. She activated her presentation, showing overlay patterns of the swarm's movement through the galaxy. Look at this progression. It's not random consumption. The swarm bypasses certain systems rich in resources while completely annihilating others that appear less valuable. There's selection pressure at work here. Archivist Renda leaned forward, with interest. Selection pressure implies evolution, but evolution requires reproduction, variation, selection. Exactly, Elena said, her excitement building. What if the Void Swarm isn't just consuming matter and energy? What if it's gathering genetic information, technological data, cultural patterns? What if it's trying to learn? The chamber fell silent except for the ambient hum of life support systems. The idea was so fundamentally different from their assumptions that many delegates struggled to process it. Dr. Marcus Rivera, now serving as Elena's diplomatic liaison, stepped forward. We've run simulations based on this hypothesis. If the swarm is indeed learning, its seemingly random attacks begin to make sense. It's conducting experiments, testing how different species respond to various forms of assault, gathering data on technological capabilities, social structures, even psychological patterns. The Quarian delegate's crystalline form refracted light, in patterns of distress. If this is true, then our resistance efforts have been feeding it information about our capabilities. Worse, Elena continued. Every defeat teaches it more about our weaknesses, but this also means it has weaknesses of its own. If it's truly a learning system, it must have originated somewhere. It must have purposes and limitations we can exploit. High Counselor Vexra's eyes narrowed. Even if your hypothesis is correct, how does this help us defeat an entity that has consumed hundreds of worlds? Elena looked around the chamber at the faces of species that had dismissed humanity as primitive just months ago. Because learning systems can be confused, misdirected, even reprogrammed, and humanity has thousands of years of experience outsmarting opponents who were bigger, stronger, and more advanced than we were. She activated another display showing Earth's military history. Asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations. We've never been the strongest species in our galaxy, but we've survived by being the most adaptable, the most creative, and the most stubborn. We don't just fight harder, we fight smarter. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species remained skeptical, others began to see possibilities they hadn't considered. But for the first time since the crisis began, there was something in the air that had been absent for months. Hope. Vexra raised a hand for silence. Dr. Vasquez, the Council will consider your proposal. But know this. If humanity leads us down a path that results in further losses, the consequences will be severe. Elena nodded grimly. Understood. But with respect, Counselor, you've been losing for months using conventional approaches. Sometimes the greatest risk is refusing to take any risks at all. As the session ended, Elena noticed more delegates approaching her with questions instead of dismissals. The galaxy was finally ready to listen to the backwater species they'd once mocked. 3 weeks later, humanity's plan was put into motion. The strategy was so audacious that several council members had called it suicidal, but desperation had made even the most cautious species willing to attempt the impossible. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the experimental vessel Perseverance, humanity's first deep space warship. Unlike the massive dreadnoughts favored by galactic powers, the human ship was small, fast, and filled with improvised technology that made seasoned engineers cringe. But it also contained something no other vessel possessed: a complete database of human culture, history, and knowledge, deliberately corrupted with false information designed to confuse any entity trying to learn from it. Target acquired, reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the tactical station. Void Swarm Vanguard bearing 27 Mark IV. Estimated construct count, 47,000. The bridge crew fell silent. Even a single Void construct had proven capable of destroying capital ships. 47,000 represented more firepower than most species could muster in their entire fleets. Remember, Rodriguez said, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. We're not here to fight them. We're here to teach them. Dr. Vasquez, are the information packages ready? Elena worked at her console, surrounded by data streams that would have overwhelmed most beings. All cultural data corrupted and prepared for transmission. If our theory is correct, the swarm will attempt to analyze and integrate this information, just like it has with every other species it's encountered. The plan was elegantly simple and terrifyingly complex. If the Void Swarm was indeed a learning system, then it would try to understand humanity by analyzing their data. But the information they were about to feed it contained deliberate contradictions, impossible paradoxes, and cognitive traps designed to create processing conflicts within any system trying to comprehend it. Contact in 30 seconds, Park announced. Void constructs are altering course to intercept. Through the viewports, they could see the swarm approaching, dark shapes that seemed to absorb light itself, moving with purpose through the void. Up close, they were even more terrifying than the recording suggested, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid shadow. Initiating transmission, Elena announced, broadcasting human cultural database on all frequencies. The response was immediate. The Void constructs suddenly stopped their advance, their forms flickering as they processed the incoming data. For a moment, the Perseverance drifted alone in space, surrounded by entities capable of erasing it from existence. Then the constructs began to change. Elena, Rodriguez called urgently. What's happening to them? The dark forms were writhing, their shapes becoming increasingly erratic. Some began to pulse with strange lights, others started fragmenting into smaller pieces. The organized formation dissolved into chaos as individual constructs began exhibiting wildly different behaviors. It's working, Elena breathed, watching. Her instruments tracked the swarm's confusion. The contradictory information is creating processing conflicts. They're trying to reconcile impossible cultural paradoxes, how humans can be simultaneously peaceful and warlike, logical and emotional, cooperative and competitive. But their triumph was short-lived. As they watched, the constructs began to stabilize, their forms becoming more solid and defined. Worse, they were beginning to organize again, but in new patterns, unlike anything previously observed. They're adapting, Park reported grimly. They're not just processing the information, they're integrating it, learning from it. Rodriguez gripped his command chair. How long before they... His question was answered as the reformed construct suddenly accelerated toward them, moving faster than any previous swarm elements. But there was something different about their approach. Instead of the mechanical precision they'd shown before, their movements now contained something almost human. Captain, Elena said, her voice tight with realization. I think we may have just taught them to be more like us, and that might not be a good thing. The constructs opened fire, but their weapons had changed too. Instead of the reality-warping energy they'd used before, they now employed tactics humanity would recognize. Feints, flanking maneuvers, psychological pressure. The Void Swarm had learned from humanity's own playbook. Evasive maneuvers, Rodriguez ordered. But he knew it was too late. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and facing an enemy that had just absorbed thousands of years of human tactical knowledge. As the Perseverance shuddered under enemy fire, Elena realized they'd made a critical error. They'd assumed that confusing the swarm would weaken it. Instead, they'd given it new tools to use against them. The Backwater species that thought they could outsmart the galaxy might have just doomed it instead. The Perseverance limped back to the rendezvous point, its hull scarred by weapons that shouldn't have existed, and its crew shaken by what they'd witnessed. The Void Swarm hadn't just adapted to humanity's tactics, it had improved upon them with terrifying efficiency. Dr. Elena Vasquez sat in the ship's cramped laboratory, surrounded by data recordings from their encounter. The readings made no sense according to conventional physics, but they told a story that chilled her to the bone. The swarm wasn't just learning. It was evolving in real time, incorporating new strategies and technologies at a rate that defied comprehension. The good news, she reported to the emergency council session via quantum communication, is that our hypothesis was correct. The Void Swarm is indeed a learning system, and it can be influenced by the information it encounters. High Counselor, Vexra's serpentine form coiled with barely contained fury. And the catastrophically terrible news is that you've made it significantly more dangerous. The swarm is now employing tactics we've never seen before. It's adapting our own strategies. Against us, Elena nodded grimly. The constructs that engaged us weren't just using human tactics. They were using improved versions. They'd identified weaknesses in our own approaches and corrected them within minutes of exposure. The chamber erupted in angry voices from dozens of species. Accusations flew in languages both familiar and alien. The Velthari delegation was calling for humanity's immediate expulsion from galactic space, while the Quarians suggested more permanent solutions to the human problem. But Archivist Randa raised a crystalline appendage for attention. The ancient keeper's luminous eyes seemed to glow brighter as he spoke. Dr. Vasquez, you mentioned that the constructs improved upon human tactics. How is this possible if they're simply mimicking learned behaviors? Elena felt a spark of realization. That's exactly what's been bothering me. A purely learning system should only be able to copy, not innovate. But these constructs demonstrated genuine creativity, genuine problem-solving ability. She activated her data displays, showing the tactical recordings from their encounter. Look at this sequence. The swarm didn't just copy human flanking maneuvers, it invented new ones we'd never documented. It created hybrid tactics combining human psychology with Velthari energy manipulation and Quarian spatial distortion. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. It's not just learning, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger with certainty. It's thinking. The Void Swarm isn't an artificial intelligence or an automated system. It's genuinely alive, genuinely intelligent, and it's been trying to communicate with us from the beginning. General Harrison's voice crackled through the communication link from Earth. Elena, are you suggesting this thing is sentient? More than sentient, she replied. I think it's desperate. Think about it. An intelligence that exists partially outside normal space-time, trying to understand species that exist within it. Every attack hasn't been random destruction. It's been increasingly sophisticated attempts at communication. The silence stretched until the Quarian delegate's crystalline form chimed with disbelief. You're suggesting that the entity that has consumed hundreds of worlds is simply trying to talk to us? Elena pulled up stellar cartography displays, showing the swarm's path through the galaxy. Look at the pattern again, but this time consider it as language rather than military strategy. The timing between attacks, the selection of targets, the intensity of each engagement. What if it's not destruction, but syntax? Archivist Renda's ancient eyes widened with recognition. A language written in star systems, messages encoded in the patterns of what it consumes and what it spares. But why such a destructive method of communication? Vexra demanded. Elena's expression grew somber. Because it's dying. The data suggests the void swarm exists in a state of constant entropy. It needs to consume matter and energy just to maintain coherence. It's not destroying civilizations out of malice. It's trying to preserve them by learning everything about them before they're lost to the decay of time. The revelation hit the chamber like a physical blow. The greatest threat in galactic history wasn't a monster or a weapon. It was a being so alien that its attempts at preservation looked like annihilation to lesser intelligences. Dr. Vasquez, Vexra said slowly, if your theory is correct, how do we communicate with an entity that thinks on such a scale? Elena looked around the chamber at the faces of species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive. We need to think bigger than any single species has ever thought before. We need to respond in a language it can understand, not words or symbols, but patterns of existence itself. The Backwater world that had been rejected by the galaxy was about to propose the most ambitious undertaking in galactic history. What followed was the largest coordinated effort in galactic history. Species that had warred for millennia worked together, sharing technologies and knowledge that had been guarded secrets for eons. The plan Elena proposed was so ambitious that it required the combined resources of every major civilization in the galaxy. Dr. Marcus Rivera stood in the command center of Harmony Station, a massive construct built at the intersection of major hyperspace lanes. Around him, representatives from 300 species worked alongside human engineers and scientists, creating something that had never existed before. A communication device capable of speaking in the language of cosmic forces themselves. Phase. 1 initiators are online, reported Commander Singh, humanity's liaison to the project. Stellar manipulation arrays in 17 systems are synchronized and ready. Elena moved between workstations, coordinating with beings whose thought processes were so alien that communication required specialized translation matrices. Yet somehow, they were all working toward the same goal, not to destroy the void swarm, but to speak with it. The Quarian reality anchors are stable, announced the crystalline delegate through harmonic frequencies. We can maintain localized space-time coherence for approximately 14 standard hours. Archivist Renda approached Elena, his ancient form moving with purpose. Dr. Vasquez, the historical records you requested have been compiled. Every major galactic civilization has contributed their cultural achievements, scientific discoveries, and philosophical insights to the message matrix. The plan was breathtaking in its scope. Instead of transmitting data through conventional channels, they would speak to the void swarm in its own language, patterns of stellar manipulation, carefully orchestrated gravity waves, and controlled manipulation of the fundamental forces of reality itself. 17 star systems would pulse in synchronized patterns, creating a message visible across the galaxy. What exactly are we telling it? Asked General Harrison during a strategy briefing. Elena gestured to the holographic display showing the message structure. We're telling it our story. Not just humanity's story, but the story of every species in the galaxy. We're showing it that we understand its purpose, that it's trying to preserve knowledge and experience before entropy claims everything, and we're offering it something better than destruction. The message they crafted was a symphony of existence itself. The birth and death of stars represented the rise and fall of civilizations. Gravitational waves carried the emotional weight of love, loss, hope, and dreams. The controlled collapse of gas giants told the story of sacrifice and renewal. Initiation. In T-minus 60 seconds, Commander Singh announced. Elena felt the weight of the galaxy's hopes on her shoulders. If they were wrong about the swarm's nature, this unprecedented display of coordinated effort would accomplish nothing except announcing their locations to an entity capable of consuming star systems. T-minus 30 seconds. All stations report. Ready! Through the viewing ports of Harmony Station, Elena could see distant stars beginning to flicker in unusual patterns. Across 17 systems, the greatest technological achievement in galactic history was about to attempt something that had never been tried: communication with an intelligence so vast that it thought in terms of cosmic epochs. T-minus 10 seconds. Final systems check. All green. Elena closed her eyes and thought about the journey that had brought them here. Humanity had been rejected as a backwater species, dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. Yet their unique perspective, their ability to see patterns others missed, to think in ways that defied conventional wisdom, had become the key to the galaxy's survival. Initiation, now. Across the galaxy, stars pulsed in perfect synchronization. Reality itself became a communication medium as the combined efforts of 300 species spoke in a voice that could be heard across the cosmos. The message was complex beyond description, yet its meaning was simple. We understand. We're here. We want to help. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The void swarm suddenly stopped its advance, every construct freezing in space as the entity focused its vast intelligence on parsing the unprecedented message. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy was truly speaking with one voice, and something in the darkness between stars was finally listening. The construct formations began to shift, reorganizing into patterns that mirrored the stellar message. The void swarm was responding, its reply written in the movement of matter and energy across light years of space. Elena opened her eyes and smiled. The backwater species had just helped the galaxy achieve something unprecedented: first contact, with an intelligence beyond their wildest comprehension. The communication lasted for 3 days. By the time it concluded, the galaxy had been fundamentally transformed, not by conquest or destruction, but by understanding. Elena stood in the gardens of New Terra Station, the first jointly constructed habitat where representatives from every known species could meet on equal ground. The station orbited a star that had participated in the Great Communication, and its light seemed somehow different now, fuller, more alive with possibility. The void swarm, which now called itself the Archive of Endings, had shared its true purpose. It was indeed a vast intelligence, but one born from the collective consciousness of civilizations that had died eons ago. Every culture it had consumed had actually been preserved within its matrix, their knowledge and experiences saved from the entropy that claimed all things in the physical universe. But the process was flawed. Without living civilizations to provide context and meaning, the preserved cultures became static, their knowledge fading into irrelevance. The archive had been searching for species capable of true communication, beings who could help it understand how to preserve life rather than just the memory of life. Quite a view, said Ambassador Crixtal, the Velthari delegate who had once mocked humanity's ambitions. His mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned was their expression of profound respect. To think that 6 months ago, we considered your species irrelevant to galactic affairs. Elena smiled, watching ships from dozens of species dock at the station's multiple ports. Irrelevance is often a matter of perspective. We were never trying to prove we were superior to anyone. We just wanted to contribute. The transformations had been remarkable. The archive had shared technologies beyond imagination, not weapons or tools of conquest, but methods for preserving knowledge, extending consciousness, and communicating across impossible distances. In return, the galaxy's living species had taught it something equally valuable: how to adapt, how to grow, and how to find meaning in change rather than just preservation. High Counselor Vexra approached, her serpentine form moving with less tension than Elena had ever seen. Dr. Vasquez, the Council has reached its decision regarding Earth's application to the Galactic Consortium. Elena turned, curious but not anxious. So much had changed that the old concerns seemed almost quaint. The application is rejected, Vexra continued, and Elena felt a moment of confusion. Because it is no longer relevant. The Council has voted unanimously to dissolve the existing consortium structure and establish something new, the Galactic Unity, with Earth as the designated neutral ground for all future negotiations and decisions. The implications hit Elena like a physical force. You're making Earth the capital? Not just the capital, interjected Archivist Renda, his ancient eyes glowing with something that might have been amusement. The heart. Humanity's unique perspective, your ability to find solutions others cannot see, to bridge differences others consider insurmountable, has become essential to our continued cooperation. Elena looked out at the ships arriving at the station, each one carrying representatives who had once dismissed her species as primitive. The irony was not lost on her. The backwater world that had been deemed unworthy of inclusion in galactic civilization had become the foundation upon which a new form of civilization would be built. There's more, Vexra continued. The Archive has agreed to establish a permanent communication relay through Earth's solar system. Your species will serve as interpreters and facilitators for ongoing dialogue between the living galaxy and the preserved civilizations within the archive. The responsibility was staggering. Humanity would become the bridge between life and memory, between the present and the infinite past, between the chaos of existence and the order of preservation. Will we be ready for this? Elena asked, voicing the question that weighed on her heart. Crixtal's mandibles clicked with certainty. Your species has spent its entire existence preparing for this moment, Dr. Vasquez. You have faced every challenge by adapting, by learning, by refusing to accept that anything is truly impossible. The galaxy needs that perspective now more than ever. As Elena watched the sun set over New Terra Station, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had been rejected as a backwater species, dismissed as too primitive and chaotic to contribute to galactic civilization. Yet their very qualities that had seemed like weaknesses, their adaptability, their stubborn refusal to accept limitations, their ability to find hope in desperate situations, had become the key to the galaxy's future. The backwater world had become the capital of the stars not through conquest or superior technology, but through something far more powerful, the willingness to see possibilities where others saw only problems, to find connections where others saw only differences, and to keep trying when others had given up. Earth's greatest export to the galaxy wasn't resources or technology, it was hope. And in a universe where entropy eventually claimed everything, hope was the most valuable commodity of all. The stars above New Terra Station seemed to pulse with new purpose, and Elena smiled as she realized that this wasn't an ending at all. It was humanity's true beginning among the stars, not as conquerors or subjects, but as the guardians of possibility itself. In the distance, the first archive construct approached the station, its dark form no longer threatening but welcoming, a library seeking new stories to preserve, new experiences to understand. And Earth, the backwater world that had once been denied a voice in galactic affairs, would help write the next chapter of the universe's greatest story. The journey from rejection to redemption was complete, but the adventure was just beginning.